Welcome to the Genre Fiction Podcast. This morning, Harry Colfer here, and I have with me
Jack Roney.
This morning, or actually evening, because our guest is coming to us from Scotland, is David Bishop. He's a Kiwi writer living in Scotland, who currently is writing historical thrillers set in Renaissance Italy, despite not being able to speak a word of Italian. His Cesare Aldo novels have won the Nio Marsh Award, the Crime Writers Association Historical Dagger, and has been shortlisted for the Wilbur Smith Adventure Writing Prize and the McIlvenney Prize. If I just read out his publication list, we'd probably be here all day. So, in a nutshell, he's been a journalist, an editor, and writer of comic books, such as Judge Dredd, 2000 AD, and The Phantom, written stories for Doctor Who, scripts for BBC, and also found time to set up a creative writing master's course at Edinburgh Napier University. So, welcome, Dr. David Bishop, to our humble little podcast.
Oh, thank you for having me. Sadly, I have not finished my PhD yet, so I'm not yet able to call myself Dr. David, but just David's fine. So, yeah.
Right. Okay. Well, we'll stick to just David then.
Brand.
With such a extensive back catalogue of publications, have you actually reached the heady heights of being a full-time writer, or are you still officially a university lecturer?
I was a full-time writer from 2000 through to the end of 2008. And that was actually when I took the part-time job to help set up the creative writing program at Edinburgh Napier University in Scotland. And I agonized for quite a long time before I even applied for the job, because I saw the job advertised and I thought, oh God, the last thing I want to be is a teacher. My mum was a teacher, and I just, I'm not sure, it made her happy sometimes, but not all the time. And I just thought teaching would just be homework for life. And I'm already a writer, so I've already got homework for life as it is. Because you know what it's like, you're writers, the brain never quite turns off, no matter how hard you try. But the university was looking to set up this creative writing program, and they sort of had a list of all the experience that they would like you to have. So it was like, have you written science fiction? Have you written fantasy? Have you written this, that, the other? And I was like, tick, tick. It's like that invented the job for me. It was quite disconcerting, actually. And I wasn't sure I wanted it, but I thought, oh, well, I'll apply for it. I'll probably never even get an interview. And then I was offered an interview, and I went along to the interview, but I wasn't sure I actually wanted the job. So I was like incredibly relaxed and totally chill. Just like, whatever. And by the time I drove home, because I live about an hour away from the campus, they were phoning me up as I walked in the door where the phone was ringing to them offer me the job. And it was a Friday afternoon. I was like, oh, I don't know. Can you call me back on Monday? I have to think about it. And they were like, what? Don't you understand how scarce jobs are in academia for somebody with no qualifications, but no great history of teaching? No history of teaching whatsoever, in fact. So anyway, I accepted the job. And at which point I then became a part-time university lecturer and a part-time writer. But I figured I'd spent most of the, I guess we call them the noughties, whatever we call that first decade of the century. Anyway, writing sort of anything and everything, which is why my back catalogue goes on for days. But I was writing to pay the bills effectively, which is nothing wrong with that, perfectly honourable profession. But it leads you to sort of writing which is slightly more, I guess, fit the purpose would be a good way to describe it. Like, that'll do pig is the other way to describe it, if we were going to invoke the great Babe. So you get very good at just writing stuff that's good enough and getting paid and then moving on to the next job. And I didn't feel like I was fulfilling whatever potential I may have as a writer. So I thought, actually, the teaching gig would be helpful, because I'd be doing that at that point 2.5 days a week, and then I have the rest of the week to write, and then I could write what I wanted to write rather than just what paid the bills. So I became a part-time university lecturer, and 16, 17 years later, I'm still a part-time university lecturer. Well, now I'm 4 days a week because I'm running 3 different postgrad programs and writing in my copious spare time. So, just working 8 days a week. It's fine.
I have done the lecturing gig at one point in my past, and it is a bizarre situation where university lecturers don't actually have to have any qualifications in teaching. It's just strange.
Yeah, well, certainly when I joined the university, yeah, I mean, I had a master's in screenwriting,
Mhm.
which is why I ended up writing for the BBC and places like that. And I'd done my master's at the university where I ended up teaching. So I knew how the university worked, which was helpful, and
Mm.
a sense of how postgrad programs in general ran at the university and in our particular school, arts and creative industries. So it was helpful. But yeah, I had no teaching experience whatsoever. So they were taking me on a degree of faith. But equally, I had been a comics editor for 10 years, so I dealt with a lot of creative people, writers, and artists. And I knew how to bring on new talent and nurture new writers. And I knew a lot about story structure and all these other things. And I'd published at this point, well, I don't know, 19, 20 novels. You do lose track after a while. The idea was I knew what I was doing. After I was taken on, they changed the sort of their criteria for how they hired staff. And now you essentially have to have a PhD to get a job at the university. And that certainly is the case in Australian universities now, as I
Yeah.
understand it, and the same in New Zealand. It's one of the reasons why I started doing my PhD is on the basis if I ever wanted to move to another university, I would need a PhD in order to get a job teaching other people writing.
Yeah.
I'm like, the PhD has no impact on my ability to teach people how to write because it's not what a PhD is about. It's not a teaching people. I don't understand it. It's universities. They're a weird mob.
I refer to a PhD as a degree in bloody mindedness, because basically it's a case of just having to keep slogging, usually against a lot of bureaucracy, to get that final sort of certificate that you've sort of completed the hoop jump.
Yeah. Oh god. Yeah. Well, put it this way. I mean, I'm doing mine part time via distance learning before it was fashionable. So I started in 2017, and it's 2015 now. So this is year 9, and I'm still. Admittedly, I did take the 2 years off on suspended studies during the pandemic because the pandemic.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I've got a drop dead hand in date of June next year. So I've got about 14 months to pull my thumb out and actually finish the bloody thing.
I
So
did.
yeah, that's one of my jobs.
I mine. I dim distant past as a marine biologist, but yeah, 4.5 years full time. So, and then another year of corrections. So you're doing fine if you're going part time. If you double that, you're doing fine.
Yeah, yeah,
There was
yeah,
a
yeah.
there
I
was a
mean, the
chap
irony, of
who
course, is that yeah, the irony, of course, is that when I started the PhD, I had two motivations. One was to get the doctorate, so if I wanted to change jobs, I could. I'm now so old. By the time I finish the bloody thing, it'll be time to retire anyway. So it's a pure vanity project at this point.
Can I
And
ask
then the
David
other
what?
reason why,
Oh, sorry, keep going.
no, 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 on you go.
I was just going to ask, what is your research project for your PhD?
Oh, yeah, that's easy. It's the first book of my series.
that's why I presumed you had it.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Because the book's been out for ages. You must have finished the bloody thing by now. Nah, 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 none of that. No, the book, that was the easy bit. I'm not going to say I could do it standing on my head, but I'd already published 20 novels by that point. I kind of knew what I was doing. It's the academic stuff that has to go with it. So it's a creative writing PhD, and 80% of it is the book, and 20% is the academic critical research elements. So yeah, and my critical research has mutated and changed 3 times in the years I've been failing to finish it. So yeah, I've got a meeting with my supervisor in the next week or two to try and define what it is I actually think I'm doing, and then a year to bloody finish it. So
There was a
yeah, don't
chap.
do a PhD, people.
Yeah, there was a chap I know, and he's actually one of the team who discovered the coral spawning on the Barrier Reef, and he actually started trying to do a PhD on the biology of coral reproduction. So and he wanted to do the whole thing. And at one point, after I think must have been 8 or 9 years full time, his supervisor said, "You have 8 volumes written. Could you just publish one of them submit one of them as your PhD, and he submitted one and got his PhD from that, and you're just like, wow.
Yeah. Well, yeah, this is it. I mean, there's another way you could do the creative writing PhD. It's called by published works. In fact, other PhDs. So that you either write a load of journal articles and publish them, and then you do a wraparound essay that sums it all up.
Yeah.
Or you can write 4 novels and do a wraparound essay that sums it all up. And the irony is, I've been writing, because I write a book a year in my Cesare Aldo series with Pan Macmillan. So I've now been doing the Aldo series for so long whilst doing the PhD. I could now do a PhD by published works with the series I've been writing while I've been doing a stupid PhD. Yeah. No, I have many thoughts when it comes to academia and creative writing, not all of them positive, despite the fact that I actually run 3 different postgrad creative writing programs, but I'm sure we'll get to that.
Just a quick question. We'll delve more into your professional career and writing shortly. But so you herald initially from New Zealand, and you're now living in Scotland. What's the story behind that? How did you come to be in Scotland?
Oh gosh. Okay. All right. So I did high school. I didn't do university straight after high school because both my brothers, I'm sure they'll forgive me for saying this, both went to university and both dropped out after 2 years. And for various reasons, mostly a combination of bands and student radio. And they discovered they loved music and student radio a lot more than they enjoyed going to lectures, frankly. And I was worried that I lacked any sort of discipline or the ability to, stick it through a degree. And I wasn't sure on why I wanted to do a degree anyway. So I went off and did a journalism sort of 6-month pressure cooker course, which guaranteed you a job at the end of it. So I worked as a journalist for 5 years. At the end of that, I was like, okay, yeah, I think it's time to move on. Also, my mother died of cancer when I was 22. And that sort of concentrates the mind and makes you think, geez, all right, get on with it. So I saved up my money and thought, right, I'm emigrating. And then it was a case of, do I go to Australia and join the other 10 million New Zealanders living in Australia? It's the old gag. What's the difference between a ET and a New Zealander? ET went home. But I was just like, yeah, no. And I probably could have just about swung America at that point, although these days, maybe not.
Yeah.
But I thought, no, tell you what, let's go for London. So I emigrated to London at the start of 1990 and ended up, editing comics in London for 10 years, 2018, Judge Dredd, as was mentioned previously. And then quit to go freelance. And my partner, who's British, they were also looking to get out of their job and shift around. And at one point we were looking at moving to Brussels because they could have got a job in Brussels doing what they do. And I was figuring, I'm going freelance. I can work anywhere as long as there's functioning dial-up as the internet was back in the dawn of time. Lord. And a post office in walking distance. But then they got a job offer in Scotland. And I was like, yeah, well, Scotland's fine. They speak a version of English up here.
Bloody cold.
Just about. The weather was less pleasant after living in London, I have to say. Slight shock to the system. So I sort of, we stumbled into Scotland and we've been here 25 years now. So there you go. It's almost, I did once see a diagram. They stuck a pin through the planet Earth. And if you go from New Zealand, the exact opposite is actually Lisbon and Portugal. I thought it would be Scotland, but it's Lisbon and Portugal. But they've got their own problems today. So, yeah.
Yes.
And just a question about your publishing journey. It's a question we ask all authors because I think everyone's got their own journey. As I said to you before we started, what you've achieved is probably, well, certainly what most authors would aspire to in terms of the number of publications, the diversity, the fact that you have a literary agent, you're with Pan Macmillan, one of the big publishing houses. What's your journey into publication to the point now that you've established yourself with one of the major publishing houses?
Well, it's 2 journeys effectively. So the first one was I was editing the Judge Dredd magazine. And Hollywood was getting set to make a Judge Dredd movie in the 1990s. I think at that point it was going to be Schwarzenegger was going to be playing Judge Dredd. And so everybody was jumping on the Judge Dredd bandwagon. And so Virgin Books, who published Doctor Who novels, got a license to do original Judge Dredd novels. So not just adapting stories from the comic, but actually new original novels based on the comics characters set in that universe. Tie-in novels, as they're called. And they had nobody who could write it. They had nobody who knew anything about Judge Dredd. And so they came into the office to talk about this. And I said, well, I could have a crack. Because I'd always wanted to write a novel. And they were like, oh, go on then. And I wrote one. And they were like, yeah, all right. Could you get us another? Because they were desperate. They were desperate people. So I wrote 3 Judge Dredd novels for them. And because they already published Doctor Who novels, and I was a big Doctor Who fan growing up, I was like, go on, give us a job. So I wrote a Doctor Who novel for them. And then when I quit to go freelance, I basically did a load of tie-in books. So sort of one job led to another. Either people would approach me because they'd heard of me from other jobs I'd done. Have you written Doctor Who novels and Judge Dredd and other things? So people got in touch and said, oh, would you like to have a go at this? So work sort of led to other work, and I didn't have a literary agent for any of that work. But then with tie-in books, most tie-in books you're writing, it's what's called a boilerplate contract. There's standard terms. There's nothing for an agent to negotiate. You don't own the copyright in the characters. Obviously, there's somebody else's characters. So if you write a Batman novel, you don't suddenly own Batman. That's owned by DC, who were owned by Warner's, who were owned by whoever owns them this week. So it's a job of work, effectively. And some of those IP jobs, you get royalties, and some of them you just get a flat fee. But you know that going in. You sign the contract, eyes wide open. You can't complain about that. So my first career as a novelist was writing tie-in books, and I didn't need an agent for that. Work just led to more work, and it was just like a snowball effect. But by about 2007, I think I stopped doing tie-in books because I'd done my screenwriting masters, and most of my tie-in work I could see was starting to dry up. You reached a point where that kind of work wasn't so prevalent anymore. And I wanted to do screenwriting. I'd done a master's in screenwriting, so that's where I concentrated my energies for the best part of the next decade, really. But the problem I found with screenwriting, when I was writing for the BBC, it was fun because I was writing to contract. So you pitched a job, you got the job, you wrote the job, you got paid. It was made, it was broadcast. So you always got to see your work being turned into something. Great, that's what you want. You're a writer, you want to share your stories with the world. That's the guts of it. But then once I stopped writing for this particular show called Doctors, which is a sort of medical soap drama that's just finished.
I remember it.
Oh, well, there you go. It's just finished, or just finishing up after Donkey's Years. So I was writing for Doctors, but I'd had enough of that. And I was trying to get gigs on other shows, and you would write a script and you spend 6 months to a year writing a script. 4 people would read it and they'd say no, and then that script was dead. And you're just like, well, where's the joy? I want to be read. I've got stories I want to tell. I want to share with other people. So I got pissed off with screenwriting basically, and jacked it in. And then I thought, well, I quite enjoyed writing novels. And, I was semi-competent at it. People giving me work. That's a positive sign, you would think. And there was this novel I'd always wanted to write, which we'll talk about in a minute when we talk about the Cesare Aldo novels. So that's why I did the creative writing PhD, because I knew it would give me deadlines, and I knew it would give me feedback, and I knew it would give me the kick up the arse I needed to write the book, because I'd spent 20 years researching the book and not writing it, which is a slow path to nowhere in particular, really. Because if you're going to write historical fiction, you kind of need to get your facts right, because otherwise readers get miffed. But I came to the conclusion I could research until the day I was dead and still not know everything. Eventually, I would just have to put up or shut up and write the bloody book. So the PhD did the big thing it's done is it helped me. It gave me the kick up the arse to write the book and actually finish it, because I'd only ever written on commission. I'd never written anything on spec, except for a handful of screenplays that went nowhere. So I kind of need somebody standing behind me with a whip and a chair to make me keep going forwards. My natural default tendency is tomorrow. which doesn't get books written. But if there's a deadline or there's a contract or a mortgage to pay, then that's a lovely motivating thing. So yeah, so the dumb luck is how I got into publishing in the first place, and how I published 20 novels. No agent, just right place, right time. And then, having been out of publishing for the best part of 10 years, I knew with the Aldo novels, the first Aldo novel, if I wanted to be traditionally published by one of the big five, I was going to need a literary agent. It was just absolutely fact. There's no getting around that. And I didn't want to be traditionally published, and my goal was by one of the big five. So I thought, fine, okay. So you're going to have to finish the novel. You're going to have to make the novel the best it can possibly be, the best version of itself. Then you're going to have to go into the query trenches. You have to find a literary agent who's likes the cut of your jib and likes your writing and wants to build that relationship with you, because it's not just the one book, of course. It's hopefully many books and a relationship that can last 5, 10, 20 years potentially. So I went out on query. I had my spreadsheet, had my top 20 agents I'd selected, and I had very particular requirements. I mean, they needed to be enthusiastic about historical fiction. They needed to be enthusiastic about crime fiction, because I'm going to be writing historical thrillers. Although I didn't know it was called historical thriller when I was writing it. I just thought I was writing historical crime. Only later, when I got the contract with Pan Macmillan, they said, well, historical thriller. And I was like, oh, is it? Okay. Great, good. That's what I'll call it from now on. Thanks. So I queried agents. I did a first round of queries. And within 24, in fact, less than 24 hours, one of those agents sent me back this email to say, I mean, honestly, it was so gushing, I was embarrassed for him. I was like, oh, mate, have you got no shame? It's like, oh, I've been reading this in a cafe. I'm late for a meeting. I must have the rest of your manuscript. I was like, blimey, this is going well. So I said, of course, here it is. And then, being the sly dog that I am, I instantly then wrote to the other 5 people and said, oh, I think you should know, somebody's asked for the full manuscript. You want to get in on this action? And then another agent asked for the full manuscript about 3 days later. And I thought, oh, this is going brilliantly. And then so within the first week, 2 agents had asked for the full manuscript. And then the following week, an agent I had my eye on, who only opens for submissions for 2 weeks of the year, happened to open the next Monday. I went, oh yeah, I'll give Jenny a hit as well. Go on. So I sent it to Jenny, and Jenny was the one who ended up becoming my agent, Jenny Brown of Jenny Brown Associates. So she read the partial, asked to read the whole manuscript, and then offered to represent me. And I was like, yeah, go on. So it's great, because she's been nominated for Agent of the Year twice in the British Book Awards. And, she set up the Edinburgh International Book Festival in 1982. And you name it, she's done everything. And she's had the most incredible career, knows everybody, knows everything. And is just a really good old school agent. She's not, there's some literary agents are real roll their sleeves up, get into the text, basically editors almost in waiting effectively. So there's a lot of, particularly I would say younger agents, generally agents under 40 these days, because there's less editing is done in big publishing houses because the editors are so busy, so stretched. So a lot of agents take it upon themselves to basically be a first line of editorial notes and rewrites. And they will work with some writers up to a year on a manuscript before it goes out on submission. Jenny's slightly more old school. She'll read it, she'll have a few notes, and then if it's good to go, it's good to go. And that's fine. And she reads my books the same time as the editor does, although I sometimes feed them in dribs and drabs along the way. But she's not one for getting into the commas and the fine tooth comb for it. That's not her style. So I got Jenny as my agent, and then we went out on submission, which was, I guess, Northern Hemisphere spring, so sort of autumn. It was around Easter 2019, and I was actually in New Zealand for the whole month visiting the family. And all I got, and I told Jenny to send me everything that came in, every rejection, every piece of feedback. I wanted to see the whole lot. Don't spare anything. I want the whole unvarnished experience, not a wilting violet by any stretch of the imagination. And it was just a month of rejection. and get my teeth kicked in. And, you know, and after a month of that, you're thinking, okay, maybe I don't like the unvarnished truth. Maybe you could just polish it up slightly before you kick my teeth in. Thanks. So after a month of this, and I'm still in New Zealand, I'm starting to freak out. I'm going, oh God, it's over. It's never going to happen. After a month, for God's sakes, get us into perspective, Bishop. Anyway, so I sent Jenny an email after the latest rejection to say, well, how do you think it's going? What's are we gonna, are we gonna have a second round of submissions? And she just sent me back this wonderful 3-word reply, which was just keep the faith. That was it. That was the whole reply. I was like, okay. So I kept the faith, and she was right, of course. Jenny is always right about these things. So then we started getting offers. So 3 different publishing houses made offers on the first book in the series and the potential for more. And Pan Macmillan made the best offer, and we're the biggest publisher. And I was like, Pan Macmillan, I mean, come on, they publish like Anne Cleves, and I remember, buying all the old James Bond novels with the little Pan logo on in the top corner where he's blowing the pipe, and Colin Dexter and Inspector Morse, and C.J. Sampson and Peter James and all these amazing other writers. I'm like, yeah, I'll have some of that. Thank you very much. Very nice. So that's how I ended up with Jenny and with Pan Macmillan. It was a 2-book deal for the first one in the series, City of Vengeance, and then what became the second book in the series, The Darkest Sin. And and then that led to a second contract, and now I'm working on my way through my third 2-book contract. So yeah, living the dream.
Living the dream. And out of all of the different styles of writing that you've been involved with, novels, short stories, comic books, screenplays, which do you enjoy the most?
I'd say probably novels, just edging ahead of comics. Novels, because it's like it's like a pure line of delivery from your imagination into the imagination of the reader. So you're speaking, it's like you're standing beside them, whispering in their ear, painting little pictures inside their head for them. And, obviously there's an agent and there's an editor and then a copy editor and a desk editor and a proof. So there are filters between you, but essentially it's your words into the imagination of your readers. Whereas most other forms of writing involve other people contributing to the story that you're trying to tell. So if you're doing comics, there's going to be an artist and or a colorist, a letter as well, and an editor working on it. And that's great. And I find in comics, you can end up with something far better than you could have done by yourself. Certainly some far better than I could have drawn by myself. But the combination of 2 creative people working together can make something that like it's 2 heads are better than one. And I was very lucky with my TV work. I did 4 episodes of Doctors, and 3 of them, I was just like, wow, this is so good. These people are making me look like a genius. Yes. And then the 4th one was like, oh God, have I forgotten how to write? This is terrible. What the actual happened here? And it was a object lesson. And yeah, okay, you got lucky. I mean, the quality of the writing was not vastly better or worse. It was slightly worse, but yeah, the directing of that episode was just flat and turgid, and just the whole thing was uninspired from start to finish. I was just like, oy, this is when telly goes wrong. Blimey. That was a chastening few weeks, I have to say. But yeah, so I think, yeah, prose fiction, first love, and then writing comics. I really enjoy writing comics and sort of having the movie playing in my head and then turning it into a script and then seeing what an artist does with it. It's great fun. I mean, I enjoy screenwriting and I quite like audio drama and radio plays, but because then again you have the creativity of the actors and the director, and they can do things with it that you hadn't imagined, and they can take it to places that you wouldn't have got there by yourself. But yeah, for the purest form of storytelling, the novels for me.
Yeah. I am actually quite intrigued as to how you go about actually writing a comic strip. I mean, I had a very, very brief, and I mean very brief, dip into more of a cartoon strip, and I'd never consider myself a writer because literally probably the five that got published totaled somewhere in the region of about, I don't know, 10, maybe 15 words, because it was all about the drawings, you know.
Yeah.
But how do you go about actually creating a comic strip?
I mean, it's not. It's similar in many ways to a screenplay. So the format
Yeah.
looks a lot of ways like a screenplay. And there are certain. I actually one of the modules I teach on the program at university is called writing graphic fiction. It's about writing the scripts for comics and web comics, graphic novels. So it's actually about the techniques and the craft involved in it. So it's a weird sort of halfway house between screenplays and prose fiction. In the format wise, it looks a lot like a screenplay. And you have, instead of scene description, you have panel descriptions. So you're describing what you want the artist to draw in each picture. And then you write the dialogue and to appear in balloons or in thought bubbles or caption boxes as well. So you're describing a lot of things. But essentially what you need to do in comics is you need to describe things happening. You need to make it active. You need to have a sense of action and forward movement and momentum. It's the old Russell T Davies TV writing advice, everything on the move, all on the move. It's all got to be going forwards the whole time if you can possibly manage it. But the difference between screenwriting, essentially, it's the ability to externalize the internal. So it's to have the inner life of characters represented through their actions and their words and what they do and don't do, what they say and don't say, and how the actor fulfills that. But you always have to, because it's frowned upon to have voiceover, to have the inner monologue of the character spoken out loud on screen is frowned upon because it's done so badly so often. So therefore it's deemed to be cheesy and a bit shit, frankly. Unless you're doing, good old-fashioned American soap opera like The Days of Our Lives, then characters will stare out windows moodily, synopsizing and soliloquizing from inside their brains. But that's not most cinema works. So cinema's about externalizing the internal. The joy of comics is that you can have all that kinetic action, all the visual imagination, but you can also have the inner life of characters. You can have captions with their interior monologue, but you can have thought bubbles. So you get to have sort of the best of both worlds. You get to cheat and tell the readers what characters are thinking and feeling, as well as showing cool action. And of course, the only budget in comics is time and artistic talent, because you can have 10,000 spaceships coming over, and it doesn't take 1,000 people in Thailand or Bangkok or wherever, or Weta, busy with the computer animating it for the next year of their life, because some guy can just draw it and pretty quickly. Although the 10,000 spaceships, I don't think an artist would thank you for that. I think there'd be a lot of silhouettes used if you were doing that.
Lots of little dots into the distance.
yeah, black with stars. There we go. They're all cloaked. You can't see them. Yeah.
I grew up. I still remember, and if only I had the foresight at the time, having the first copies of 2000 AD when they came out, and if I hadn't actually read it and kept it and put it in a plastic bag, it would probably be worth a lot of money now. But it must have been very cool working for that sort of magazine. Or what was it like? I mean, and it's been going now for 45 years or something like that, or more.
Yeah, it's knocking. It's just had its 48th birthday. It'll be
48th
50
birthday
years in 2027. Yeah, because it started in 1977, the height of punk rock. Yeah, so I was there from 1990 through to 2000, summer of 2000, working on a Judge Dredd spin-off title, and then on the Mothership 2000 AD itself. And yeah, a lot of the time it was brilliant. Because you got to work with these amazing writers, these incredible artists. You'd find new talent and bring them on. Or you work with these sort of legends of British comics, people like John Wagner and Alan Grant and Carlos Ezquerra and Arthur Ranson, all these other amazing writers and artists. So that was brilliant. And you got to find new writers and artists and help them build a career and hone their skills. That was my favorite part of the job. And also you just got to read the scripts before anybody else. You saw the artwork before anybody else. And when I was working on it in the 90s, it was still all pretty much all physical artwork. Yeah. Everybody hadn't switched to computer art at that point. I think Carlos was one of the first artists to really properly get into computer coloring, which made for some pretty garish experiments for the first year or two till he figured out the technology, and then everybody else started to follow in his footsteps. But he was always very innovative as an artist. So no, it was brilliant. I mean, the comics creators and working on the comic was great. The sort of the dealing with management and the upper echelons of publishing, not so much. It's always the way. It's always the bosses.
Yeah, I think that's a lot of jobs.
I think that's every job, frankly. Yeah, no, it was. I think when I was on 2000 AD, the budget got cut by 5 to 10% every year. So every year we had to find another way to try and salami slice our way to. We had to make £100,000 a year in profit every year. That was our job. And by whatever means necessary, if that meant cutting the pages strip out, or if it means replacing a color strip with a black and white strip because that saved us some money, or changing the size of the shape of the comic because by shaving 15 millimeters off one side of the comic, that saved 20 grand. Just whatever trick we could come up with to make sure it kept making money, and therefore we kept getting to publish it every year. But yeah, I my editorial budget was around £500,000. I was commissioning 70, 80 artists in 20 countries around the world. And yeah, no, it was a brilliant job, but it was all consuming. I stopped writing anything while I was editing 2000 AD. For those 4.5 years, I didn't write a sentence of my own because it was just like, I found I couldn't do the job unless I fully committed to it. I had to give it everything, which is why I got burnt out by the end of the 90s and went, right, time to quit, time to go freelance, time to go and write my own stories now. So yeah.
I've got a question, David, about coming into a pre-existing character and how you would stay true to an existing character, Judge Dredd, Phantom, Doctor Who. When you're coming into a franchise character, the pressure that must be on you to stay true to the voice of that character. It's not like you've created something yourself and you've already developed your own nuances about that character. Can you tell us about how you hit the ground running and you're writing for a pre-existing character? How do you do that to sort of stay true to that and for the fans of those characters?
Yeah, it's a good question because it's a particular set of challenges. First of all, I think it really helps if you already love the character. I mean, you absolutely have to know the character or the world or the universe. And I think it helps if you have a genuine love and affection for it because you're going to come to it with the enthusiasm of a fan. So I think that's important. I mean, I have written a few jobs where they were jobs as opposed to, I love this character, I want to do more with this. So I wrote a couple of Warhammer fantasy novels for Games Workshop's Black Library imprint. And I quite enjoyed the first one because it's called A Murder in Marienburg, long out of print, worth a fortune now. Not available as an ebook either. And basically it was Hill Street Blues with the occasional elf wandering past in the background and then a Skaven and some sort of vague plague shit, necromancy, going on. But basically I was writing Hill Street Blues in my head with some magic in it. And then my editor or the publisher got increasingly peevish with me for calling it a police procedural with magic. He was like, no, nobody publishes a police procedural with magic. Obviously, this is before Rivers of London by Ben Aronovich. So I wrote a second book for them and they said, for this one, we want more Warhammer in your Warhammer. I was like, oh, all right. I'll have a necromancer and his undead army invade the city. And my heart really wasn't in it. And I didn't do any more for them after that because I just went, I was faking it and I knew I was faking it. And because they took away the one thing I was enjoying in doing it, which was the police procedural, as moments like that, you sort of, why are you not just writing a crime novel, you pillock? Instead of, all these other things. When I was writing Doctors, it's a medical drama series, but there's always a police investigation or a mystery. I'm writing Warhammer, which is meant to be, Sturm and Drang and, all this very grim dark, burly men and magic. And I was like, oh, yeah, but let's do it as police. So I couldn't help myself. So yeah, I think you have to. It really helps if you love the characters and enthusiasm for the characters. Then you have to do your research. Um, so when I started writing for the Phantom, that's 2001, so that's like 25, knocking on 25 years ago now. Because obviously, growing up in New Zealand, we got the Through Comics publications of Phantom imported from Australia, which meant every doctor's waiting room in New Zealand when I was growing up had a stack of the Phantom to keep children busy while they were waiting to go in to see the doctor. So I'd grown up reading the Phantom because it was like the cheapest comic in New Zealand because it was published in Australia, as opposed to Marvel or 2000 AD, which had to be imported, and you'd be reading the Christmas issue in the middle of April or something daft like that. So I grew up reading the Phantom, although I wasn't really paying that much attention to it. So when I was offered the chance to pitch to write for the Phantom, I thought, oh, okay, well, I'm going to need to go and do my research and remind myself what this is all about. Fortunately, we had the internet by then, which didn't hurt, and that made life a bit easier. And also, there's an entire legion of Australian Phantom fans who have voluminous websites detailing everything about the Phantom. I was like, thank you very much, Australian fans. So that made my job that bit easier. And then it's figuring out, as you say, you have to write in the spirit of the property. So you have to write a story that is in keeping with what's been done before, but still bring your own originality and something distinctive to it. So it's trying to find a fresh way. There's an expression in British TV, old wine in new bottles. So it's trying to find a fancy new bottle that presents the thing that people still love, and yet, look, fresh and exciting, and yet it's what you love at the same time. Right. So it's coming up with that combination of things and figuring out what you can do that hasn't been done before, that's true to the spirit of the thing and yet distinctive at the same time, which is a really tricky balance to pull off. Sometimes I liken it to, it's the equivalent of you've been given the keys to an incredible vintage Ferrari, and you can take it out and you can drive it as fast as you want, but my God, you better bring it back without a single scratch on it. So you can have all the fun in the world, but it need to come back untouched at the end of it, you undamaged whatsoever. A bit like the bit with the Ferrari, Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Mm-hmm. You got to take the mileage back off the clock at the end.
I think he damaged it though.
They really did damage it, but they got it home. It was still fine. It was just the clock. The speedo was the problem. So you have to bring it back in perfect condition. You can't say, oh, I'm writing Batman. I know I'm going to chop off his right arm because, in comics these days, they could probably grow back a right arm. Yeah. But, they broke his back and he got better, and they killed Superman and he got better. So, most things can be recovered. But you have, I think, love the property, do your research, treat it with respect. I wrote a Nightmare on Elm Street novel because I grew up in the 80s watching 80s slasher films, basically. So I loved the Nightmare on Elm Street films. I'd seen all of them, even the lesser entries in the series, he said politely. So I really enjoyed writing the Nightmare on Elm Street novel. And I remember I got some of the reviews on Amazon were like, yeah, this is amazing. Yay, Freddy's back. And somebody, I remember a one-star review said, this is an insult to intelligent Elm Street fans everywhere. I was like, hush. You are never going to satisfy all the fans of a particular piece of IP, and you should just give up trying because you're not going to do it. You're better off to just write the best story you possibly can with whatever time and abilities you have available. And then the rest is, what readers will think of a story is up to them. Hopefully you're satisfied with the work you've done.